on behalf of His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samuel Ruto. Doctor, my friend, welcome. Thank you.
The Magoha family and the church, good afternoon. Before I proceed, I seek your indulgence. I want to donate half a minute of my time to Professor Njuguna Ndungu as a former colleague of Professor Magoha, all the way from the university, just to say something about Professor.
Thank you very much, CS Owaro. God is good, and all the time. Thank you very much. I just said I need to say a word because I come a long way with the family of Professor Magoha, the late Professor Magoha. For me, he has been a friend, he has been a colleague, and he has been my boss. So I think I combine so many aspects. I do remember that our young kids were actually playing together, Michael and my daughter. Michael was much slightly older than my daughter, and we were neighbors for several years. And after that, the first person who gave me leave of absence to leave the university and join the central bank was Professor Magoha. But I had a price to pay. That is why I like to eulogize him as one of the master of excellence. He always reminded me to bring my publications to him because I was on leave of absence. My publications had to reflect that, and they had to be in the university website. So when I was in the central bank, he would call me that he's coming for my publications, but I would tell him that you are still my boss, I have to come and bring my publications. The beauty about it is that he remembered even the journal articles and where I published and even the conclusions I made. That has remained. And even when he became the CS for education, I always called upon him to how do we restructure our education system. For me, being a member of the university, I know the pains he went through. But I'm very happy that I've come to eulogize a friend, a colleague, and my boss. Thank you very much. Condolences to the family.
Thank you, Prof. My duty today, Church, is to read a condolence message from His Excellency the President. But before I do that, let me once more pass my very, very sincere condolences to the Magoha family. I've known this family for close to 30 years because I happen to have gone to high school, my A-levels at St. Mary's Yala. And that is in close proximity to that of the Magoha family. So I've known the family for quite a while. Many adjectives have been used to describe Professor, but I just want to espouse a few outstanding issues about him. He breathed in discipline. He was also very, very strict. He had no time for mediocrity. I vividly remember sometime way back in the year 2003 when I was doing my postgraduate studies at the University of Nairobi, and he was then the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of administration. Then I met him at the car park next to the fountain. He was seated on a piece of stone. So I asked him, Professor, what are you doing here? Then he told me, you know, this car park, we are doing it. We have engaged the services of a contractor to lay cabro. But one thing I've learned in the public sector is that you don't delegate and assume that it will be done. So instead of getting feedback from my subordinates, I've decided to supervise this contractor every day until he finishes the work. That was Professor Magoha for you. He believed in results, and he carried that to other facets of his life. He touched many facets of the Kenyan fraternity, the academia, the health sector, and of course, I empathize with the many children in this country whom Professor touched their lives during his stint as the CS for Education. Allow me now, ladies and gentlemen, to read the speech, the condolence message from His Excellency the President. Condolence message from His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, to the family and friends of the late Professor George Magoha. We mourn the passing of a good man, a loyal servant of the Republic of Kenya, a highly accomplished scholar and a great teacher who gave sound leadership everywhere he worked. Professor George Magoha, with whom I had opportunity to work with, was a distinguished public servant, illustrious administrator, and one of Kenya's exceptional surgeons. He had extensive knowledge and expertise in the health sector and brilliantly deployed them in bettering the lives of other people. Professor Magoha was uncompromising, an academic giant of immense influence, an author, an astute thinker, and a mentor to many. Undoubtedly, our country has lost a hero and a gentleman. Yet despite these enormous accomplishments, Professor Magoha lived a humble life, and this should be a lesson to all of us. His service to the nation will forever guide, shape, and influence many generations. We thank the Almighty God for the magnificent legacy of an exemplary professional and celebrate his tremendous achievements in medicine, in the academia, and in government. Our love, thoughts, and prayers to the family, the academia, the health fraternity, and friends. May the Almighty Lord rest Professor George Magoha's soul in eternal peace. William Samoei Ruto, PhD, CGH, dated this day in Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you, CS Eleidowalo, and I'd like to now take this opportunity to go to the family, and only two members of the family will be talking today because senior brother John Obade was not able to travel to Nairobi, but he will be at home in Siaya. So it's now my privilege to ask our son, Dr. Michael Magoha, to come and make his remarks.
Afternoon, everybody. Hi. Yeah, I know it's a surprise for all of us, some more than others, but don't look so somber. He would want us to celebrate. And you know, he always likes to be early for everything, so we didn't know it included his death. But you know, we keep moving. I really wondered what I'm supposed to do, because I'm supposed to give a tribute, which means to express your feelings. And I personally find it a bit strange, because how do you condense your entire life into 10, 15 minutes with someone? Sometimes it feels a bit insulting, but what would he want? And I've had the chance of writing a few speeches for him. He never read them. He just got the talking points. And he would say I should just speak from my heart and just to be honest. And then the second thing that hit me is, who am I talking to? There are people way above my pay grade. I will never understand what you do. There's my family over there. Hi, guys. All three of them took up a moja. They're friends and family. And then I realized one simple thing. There's one job where I'm the only person who's actually qualified to talk about. And I didn't have to work for this job, and that's being his son. And in keeping with his memory, because we all have to celebrate. Don't worry, relax, relax. I'll explain what it meant to be his son. A couple of things people don't realize. All through my life, if I ever needed my dad, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. I'm okay. He would want me to do this alone. He was available. It didn't matter if he was a surgeon, if he was a cabinet secretary. And that's because he believed in family. And it was always the same. One phone call. If he can talk, he talks immediately. If he can't talk, immediately he finishes, he would come to me. And that's for 38 years of my life. And it's funny, I'm happy people touched upon it, because I used to get the usual questions of, how is it being raised by this Kali person, etc. I never saw that person. I'm the same with my mom. That's why I really love this picture. This is all I saw. He just smiled, and to put it very simply, he always just kept it very simple. They kept telling me all the time, I don't know if they even realize this, all they said is just do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. It's that simple. And that's all he did. And it's great watching him over time. Everybody always talks about his successes. But I'm blessed because I got to see when he failed. And I realized everybody forgets when he failed, because I saw how he reacted. And what hits me more, if I feel like that, the person who knows a lot more is my mom. Because as I have a child now, by the time it reaches your child, it's really stressing you. Do you know what I mean? It's stressing you. And I'm grateful for that. So I won't take too much time. The person who needs to take the most time is the person who spent the most time with him. But I'll just say 3 things that I hope everybody can take away. Number 1, family is the most important thing. You never know when you have time. He knew it. He gave me time. And he always did what he was supposed to do. A CS who still gave lectures at the university, because yes, my name is there. There was never pomp or ceremony. The funny thing is, he never looked for any of the officers. All he ever did was what he was supposed to do. And if he saw that there was something that was wrong, he just continued. If the office looked ugly, it's like, this office has to be revamped. Where do I get money? If there are too few doctors, how do we organize doctors? And then pap, pap, pap. And whenever he got an office, the other thing I remember is he was always waiting to retire. He was waiting to leave. The discussions were, what's going to happen when I leave the university? Next he's appointed somewhere. Next he's appointed somewhere else. And that makes me feel strange, because I spoke to him, well, I was with him all through. But when I was talking to him before, I was really talking to him about, sorry, there's too much on my mind. We share several offices, so that's a very strange thing. And we have the same name, so every now and then I get a text that's meant for him, which I thought was very funny. And since we're always honest to each other, I thought that was just, it was quite funny that I could always see where he was going and how he was trying to take care of me, or what he was struggling with, or how he hid it. I could go on and on because it's 36 years, but 2 stories come to mind. One was, we were sitting with him in the house. I was struggling with something, and I came to him, and he reminded me a story which I completely forgot. I was just in high school, I was in boarding, and you know how children now, you compare yourself to other children. So I had clothes, but I didn't have the cool clothes that all the other children were wearing, and they had many of them. And I remember telling him, Dad, can I get more of this? Then he just smiled. He's like, just go up to your room, put the clothes that you have. Then he gave me some time. Then I went there. We're talking about tracksuits, because that was the cool thing at the time. I had 2 of them and 2 pairs of shoes. Like, everybody had like 5. So he's like, do your friends have these? I'm like, no. Do your friends have these shoes? He's like, no. But it's like, but they have many, Cindy. I'm like, yes. So he started laughing, and that's actually what I miss, his laugh. And it was really heavy. Then I was wondering, why are you laughing? And then he said, what you do is tomorrow, you go to school, you tell all those friends who have all those clothes, ask them why they're wasting so much money buying so many clothes, that they should look to you only has 2 that are lasting for this long, and you go and tell them this exact thing. I'm sorry that you have to do so much for other people, but look at me, I'm the standard. So if you have these, then you're okay. So those are small things I think about. He made me realize, stop comparing, just do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. It's that simple. Everybody makes it seem so hard. But if you tell somebody the truth, they won't be happy. But if you're doing it properly, that's it. Trust in God. The same quote that's in one of our desks, for the Lord did not give us a spirit of fear, but of faith, hope, love, and sound mind. And that's what my dad is. He was always hope. And that will continue. I think, like I keep saying, I can just keep on going. But the last one, this one goes to everybody. Towards the end, one quick note, I have to say this for the doctors. How many professors do you know that most of their mentees are professors? You know, it's a small thing. If you're in medicine, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those are the people who came to support and help me. Always his mentees, he spent time with them. Every one of them has an individual relationship, a lunch, a coffee, a phone call, a funeral, a wedding. And that's what impresses me, because that takes time. It takes time to be human and spend time with people. That's one thing we're all missing. So forget pomp, ceremony, anything. Spend time with people. That's what he would want you to remember. Talk to the person next to you. Find out what's going on with their children. Just spend time with them. And he kept telling me this thing. If there's somebody behind you, somebody stands behind you, what do? You protect them. If somebody stands beside you, regardless of what they believe, their creed, their politics, anything, if they have decided to stand beside you, you respect them. It's literally that simple. And the last one, which he told me, if anybody stands in front of you to push you back, then it's fine. You smile and you look at the people beside you and behind you, and you show them the strength that you have now. So with that, and you trust in God, you'll be okay. So if we all do that, I think we can all be better. We can honor his memory. It's good he did all of those things, but he only reached there because he kept it simple. Do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Thank all of you for coming to spend time and see my dad rest and spend time with the family. We'll still be here. Hopefully we'll become friends. Regardless of wherever you are still who you are. So God bless you all. Thank you.
Well spoken, Michael. We're coming to the end now, and Dr. Odudu Barbara Magoha, may I request that you make your way up here for your final tribute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, a vision of 1980 has finally come true. It is a vision about my 2 parents, my father's 2 friends, and my father-in-law. And this is what took place. My husband, George Magoha, came to Nigeria in 1972. I had a scholarship the same year before finishing O-level to study medicine. My father disapproved of me applying for that scholarship. He told me I was blocking the poor. A few months after, my father passed on in 1973. I had to get that scholarship guaranteed by his friend. That's the number one friend he had. When my mom went there, the man said, I needed to see your daughter before I can guarantee the scholarship. When we went there with my mom, he took a look at me and said, and gave my mom a dressing down of the century. He said, this one will never come back to this country. Why do you want the government to imprison me? My mom went to the office crying, and a junior officer guaranteed. And he said, by the time she finishes, I would have retired or been dead, so they can't get me to repay this money. I never knew why I never traveled out of the country, because it was a full scholarship up to this day. Everybody knows that my husband was supposed to go to Zambia to do medicine. But at the last minute, he came to Lagos. We met, and after 1 month, as I said, he started telling people we are getting married. We settled that. Then I went to my mom and said, this is the man I want to marry. And my mom said, you give me some time. I'll talk to you. What happened was that my mom went and stayed fasting and praying for 3 days, and she said she was never going to leave the church until she had an answer. On the third night, my mom had a vision in 1980 that Judge Albert Omore Magoha was destined to be a great man, and that he needed me, and she had to allow me to get married to him. So my mom came back crying and said her hands were tied. But she gave my husband 2 conditions. The first one was that I had to finish my undergraduate studies. The second one was that if he married her daughter, he had to marry her too. And he asked me, what was that about? I said, it meant from now on, I've transferred responsibilities to you. You take care of my mom, you bury my mom if she goes before you. Since 1989, my husband made sure he paid for my mother's air ticket every year until she passed on in 2008. My mom became a spiritual godmother to my husband. And that is why when my mom passed on, my husband thought his life was over. When the promotion started, each time my mom came, we said, not yet, still more coming, every year. Until she passed on, she kept on telling him, still more coming, still more coming. And everything she said came to pass. With all that has happened, I believe my mom's vision has finally come true 43 years after. The second friend of my father was a urologist. He made sure my husband was a urologist. Professor Mposon from the University of Ibadan. Will you call that destiny? Will you call the way we met? And the fact that my father-in-law, my late father-in-law, moved us from the ancestral home to Umiru. Things just don't happen. He settled us. From then on, my husband's life has been on 3 pillars. His God that made him, Stare that molded him, and medicine. Everything of his, he did in medical precision. You take history, which is the problem, you investigate, make a diagnosis, and make a decision. Some people found it odd. We medics, we don't have time for storytelling. It's either this or that. And you go to theater. When you go to theater, when you come out, relatives are waiting. The first thing is, how was the surgery? Among those relatives, there are people who wish the operation never succeeded because they had their own timetable. And then there are those who are truly happy that the operation succeeded. So all the things my husband did, it was like having dinner with the devil. Devil in the sense that they say when you're having dinner with the devil, you use a long spoon so that your 2 fingers don't touch each other. You don't know what the devil has put in his nails so that they touch you, and when you take to your mouth and you eat, it will be over. So in the morning, when the devil is calling you to find out if you are dead, he asks you, your voice has changed, just to make sure that you are the same one. And you answer back and say, no, it is that nice food of yours that has made my voice to change. Thank you very much for making me have such a good meal with you. So he always prepared for the battle. That's why they said he was obsessed with success. Because each time you pass one battlefield, you prepared for the other. After all, life itself is battle. I'll never complain. I had him for 40 years. I'll be very ungrateful if I did that. There are people who have had marriages of lesser years. I thank God, and I have accepted. We were a team. He looked over my back, and I looked over his. In marriage, we all know there's nothing like 50-50. There's always one person sacrificing more than the other. It could be 40, 70, but everything just came to 100. We understood that. And as a couple, we worked through that. The fact that a vision was made did not mean that everything was going to be smooth. He was not perfect, neither was I. Neither did we have a perfect relationship. But we worked through it, knowing that marriage is about 80-20. 80% meaning what the two of you share in common. The other 20% is what may divide you. So we increase the 80% and reduce the 20% in our lives to make it 0.2%. And in that way, we had a perfect marriage. My husband did surgery up to the end. 2 hours, I turned from Mrs. to a widow. He was okay. He was not sick. We talked. He went on the day of, on the 24th of January. He went out, bought things to buy things for the late brother's funeral. At 2 o'clock, he told me he was chesty. I told him to rest, due to the stress, that he should rest. At 2:30, he asked me for a cough mixture, and I just pointed to him, my own cough mixture. I pointed to him and walked away because I was ironing to go to work. And one thing I liked about my husband is that he allowed me to grow. So my professional career was something of importance to him. So I ironed to go to work. While ironing, I heard him calling me in a stressful voice. When I went, I found out that he had collapsed and his head was almost knocking on the wall. I put my hand to the wall, and then his tongue was coming out, and I pressed down the tongue for some fresh air. I called the workers who were there. I screamed, and they come, and he got revived, put him on the floor. When he woke up, he said, "I want to see my son." That's when I knew something was not going right, because if he had said, "Call me Mike," that's different. Then he said, "Call me my son." 2 weeks earlier, he had said, if anything ever happened to him, I should call Professor Mwanda. So when I revived him the first time, I called Professor Mwanda and I told him, "Please, I need to see you urgently in my house." I didn't tell him what was wrong. I didn't want to cause an accident. Then I called my son. I asked him, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm in theater. What, are you operating or assisting?" He said he was operating. I said, "Please hand over. Your father is not feeling fine. I think you better just come quietly." And he came. So when my son arrived, my husband spoke to my son. My son said, "Okay, fine." When he arrived, I said, "Your father has had a heart attack, and but now it looks better." He said, "There's no problem. You must be on admission." "Where are your tracksuits?" He's the one who pointed out the tracksuits to my son, and then my son started making all the emergency calls. Sat up, drank, talked a bit, and then said he wanted to go for a long call. He was assisted. He went for the long call. Then Professor Mwanda came in, and he is the one who said, "Oh, you've arrived. Please check my blood pressure." As the blood pressure was being checked, he had the second attack and was rushed down there. And I think it must have been one of the most stressful things for my son when he had the third attack, knowing the implications of having a third attack. And when he finally had the fourth one, he passed, and all this happened within 2 hours. Just like a surgeon operates, finish, it's over. The following day, I dreamt he asked me, the way we used to have our discussions, pulling a seat and asking me, "What do you think I would have done in this situation?" It was best for you, it was best for me. I woke up and I said, "I set you free." That is the story of Judge Albert Omare Magoha. Magoha, son of Magoha, has exited the stage when the ovation was loudest. Thank you for celebrating his life with me.
Thank you very much, my sister, for being strong in the midst of so much turmoil. We come to the end now. After this, there will be viewing of the body. There's a tent which has been set aside for that. And I'd like to request that as you file out, if you wish to go and view the body, you'll be guided by a team of ushers who are out there to do that function. Let me now request Dr. David Githanga. I don't know if he's is here to give the vote of thanks, and immediately after giving the vote of thanks, we'll hand the program back to the church. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Barbara, Michael, and the wider Magoha family, and distinguished pilgrims. We're all pilgrims in keeping with the theme for today. Give them eternal rest, O Lord, and may perpetual light shine on them forever. No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. I'm acutely aware of the need to vacate this shrine. There's a service taking place shortly. That notwithstanding, and at the risk of inadvertently missing out a few people, you'll be placated by a lady called Doris Day, who observed, gratitude is riches. Complaint is poverty, even if that gratitude is implied. So please feel thanked if I miss you out. First off is to thank God for enabling us to be in this chapel or in this shrine for this ceremony. You can't take it for granted. Secondly is you all for sparing a whole morning, your resources, time, moral support to support the family of Professor Magoha. Medical personnel at the Nairobi hospital, when this call came, people lined up and actually waited at the accident and emergency, a whole retinue of people of different specialties to receive Professor on that fateful day. While here, I wish to thank the medical personnel in general, as well as Michael's own classmates and friends who have continued to remain with him in this very difficult time, and hope that they will remain to be with him in the next coming weeks. I think Professor Mwanda has been talked about quite closely, and he was summoned, and he's obviously close to Professor. And in quick tow in his own right is Michael Magoha. These two found themselves in doing a cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and for those of you who have the misfortune of having to do that, you require certain conditions. When you have to do it in a home setting, it's difficult, let alone when you have to do it in a moving car. It's not very easy. When you have a man larger than life who is your father and you're resuscitating, is even more of a horror. So Michael, you've done well, and we commend you. Barbara was part of that too. Remember, you are medical. When are you medical? When are you a wife? When are you a son? It's not very easy. And what makes that a little bit uneasy is that little voice in a doctor's head, that little voice in the head that says root cause analysis. All doctors are analyzing what decisions were made. Could this have been done? If this was done 2 minutes before, and you carry that burden, and they will carry that burden, and let's stop that small little root cause analysis that we all think about. We are all wiser at 2020 post-event, 2020 vision. Michael, your dad is proud of you as a doctor. It's the whole family of Rotary, and especially the ladies. I'm not saying the men are not important, but Elizabeth Kimkung has been, and Anne Van Lowe, Sally Githomo, Beatrice Kitanui, Jessica Kazina, Josephine Ojambo. They've been round about Barbara, really supporting her in this very difficult time. There's a whole community of West Africans residing in Nairobi who've been very supportive. Leave Funeral Home for professionalism and extreme kindness at a very difficult time. The church and the clergy of the Nairobi Hospital Chaplaincy, Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish, and this shrine. Of special mention today is our main celebrant of this Requiem service, our Bishop, Most Reverend Philip Anyolo, who is the Archbishop of Nairobi, like you will know, and is supporting ministers. The administration has been here and has been thanked, led by Permanent Secretary Raymond Omolo, who continue to facilitate movements and security here and at home. We thank you. National Police Service did a wonderful job yesterday as traffic marshals, as all this carnival went across the city. We thank you. A self-improvement writer, Melody Beattie, said, "Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend." Stranger into a friend. We all want us to be friends. Moving quickly, we want to thank all political leadership, the MCAs, members of parliament, senators, governors who visited the home and continue to do so. I noticed the governor, Nyang Nyong, we saw him walking in, welcome. All former members of parliament, senators, governors who visited the home and continue to do so. I noticed the governor, Nyang Nyong, we saw him walking in, welcome. All former and current permanent secretaries and cabinet secretaries, many of whom form part of the committee that made these plans possible. They were led by our MC, Honorable Tuju, as well as Honorable Matiangi. The committee was expanded, and a big group of people who are sitting over there were part of that committee. They worked round the clock to put these things together. There is a community of business people that helped out. Ministry of Education has really stepped up. We thank the minister and your team for doing what you did. The Kenya National Examination Council, Starehe Boys and Starehe Girls Centers, they've come to honor their own. There was a very senior member who wore his uniform. He's probably my age or so, a little older, and they really come out and they step up. The University of Nairobi, led by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kiama, as well as the Council Chair, Professor Miriam Were. There are chancellors that have visited also, and council members, various practitioners and dentists council, and I see one of the long-serving members sitting over there. We thank you. St. George's Primary and Junior Secondary School. State House Girls really did a show to honor a professor. And ladies and gentlemen, even as we mourn, let's remember that as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. I think
Kameme TV, Muthegi wa Ruriri.
Learning Management System, an education management tool that fits in with the country's education system and allows schools and parents to monitor students' progress effectively. From tracking and reporting to providing resources and effective learning tools, teachers and parents alike will be in the loop of each child's progress. With Mwalimu Plus, schools will not need to invest heavily in infrastructure. That's because the system offers the necessary tools, tablets and the software at a great cost to enable schools get off successfully. Things are changing, and the Mwalimu Plus Learning Management System is at the forefront of this change.
Mwaka wa 2023 turaje na project Jeromwana wa Matu neo Pema Garden. Broti ici ni cia muigana wa 50 by 100 haria turamwenda na thogora mubacirire wa ngiri 300 hamwe na title deed ukaruta deposit ya ngiri 100 nayo balance ukareha na mieri 6.
Thimo citũ ni 0704 000 333.
Farmhold Ventures Limited, guiding you to own.
No wende andũ arĩa makũrigicĩirie, arata hamwe na family yaku muikarage na thayo na mukenete. Nyitanagĩra nani Ngugi wa Karanja ngĩgũtereba thĩinĩ wa tabara ya kwĩbanga gũkũ gwa Kameme TV.
Ũrathiĩ gũcokora thimũ na thimũ yo ti yaku.
Tigai kwaria mbere ya ciana. Athuri mendaga leadership. Koguo angĩkorwo mũthuri waku ndoĩ ikara ũguo mũrĩ akĩgu.
Oro mũthenya wa Kiumia kwambĩrĩria thaa 4 cia ũtukũ nginyagia thaa 6.
Wona thĩna kĩũra rũga.
Kũmũtwarĩra ihũa kũmũhe chocolate o mũndũ ena rũthiomi rwake.
Nĩ mũndũ amenye mũtumia wake akenaga rĩ.
Tiga gũthaka na mũndũ mwarĩ ndũgũ nake. angikorwo ni urenda kurugamia muciĩ waku.
Tukurehagira ageni mwaki mwaki magagutara.
It's all about communication.
Kwiyaria, kwiiturura, ukahutha ngoro yaku.
Nawe ugatigwo ukibanga.
Maundu maya no igubangwo.
Ambiriria
harĩa ũrĩ na kĩrĩa wĩ nakĩo. Good. We wibange.
Mũgũnda nĩ kuona na kũhutia. Nĩkĩo ithuĩ ta Farmhood Ventures Limited tigagĩrĩra nĩ wona, nĩ wahutia na nĩ wegwatĩra. Tarĩki 11 February 2023 tũramũnyita inyuothe aigithia igongona-inĩ ritũ rĩa kũheana title deeds. Oho nĩtũgakorwo tũkĩrugũria Pema Gardens mwena wa